Most people think they need motivation to take action. They wait for that burst of energy or inspiration before they move. But here's the truth. Motivation is unreliable. It's fleeting. It comes and goes. And if you rely on it to build anything meaningful, you'll end up stuck. What really creates progress, what really moves the needle, is discipline. It's the decision to show up whether you feel like it or not. This might sound harsh at first, but it's actually empowering. Because if you can learn to stop waiting for motivation and start building discipline, you unlock consistency, and consistency is where the real growth happens. Showing up every single day, especially when you don't feel like it, is what sharpens your edge. That's what builds resilience. That's how your brain starts to associate discomfort with progress instead of pain. There's a neurological reason for this. When you force yourself to show up, even when you're tired or unmotivated, your brain starts adjusting. It begins to release dopamine, the neurotransmitter that drives pursuit, not only when you succeed, but when you simply take action. Over time, your system learns to crave the process, not just the result. That's the shift. You stop chasing the high of achievement and start respecting the grind. You begin to enjoy the act of showing up, even if it's hard. But none of that happens if you sit around waiting for the perfect mood or the right energy. Those ideal conditions are rare. If you train yourself to work only when it feels easy, you're reinforcing a pattern of avoidance. Your brain gets better at making excuses, and excuses, once repeated often enough, become identity. Before you know it, you're someone who wants to do things but never actually does them. Discipline cuts through that. Discipline is showing up to the gym when you're exhausted. It's opening the book when your mind is foggy. It's sitting down to study or work when 100 distractions are calling your name. Discipline says, this matters, and because it matters, I will do it, regardless of how I feel. And the more you do that, the more you start to feel differently. You build a track record with yourself. You start trusting yourself, and that trust becomes the foundation of long-term success. Think about the days when you didn't want to show up, but you did anyway. Think about how you felt afterward. That sense of pride, that quiet confidence. That's not motivation, that's earned. That's what builds momentum, and once you have momentum, it becomes easier to keep going. Not because it's always easy, but because now you've conditioned yourself to take action in the absence of motivation. It's like lifting a heavy weight. At first, it feels impossible. Your body resists. Your mind tries to quit, but over time, as you push through, your muscles adapt. They get stronger. The same thing happens with your mind. The more you push through internal resistance, the stronger your discipline becomes. And with discipline, you don't need to wait for perfect conditions. You create them. Eventually, the gap between you and your goals isn't filled with hype or inspiration. It's filled with reps, daily reps. Showing up when no one's watching, working when there's no applause, that's what builds something real, something lasting, and here's the real beauty of it. Once you understand that discipline is a skill, not a trait, you realize it can be trained. Just like a muscle, it gets stronger the more you use it. But the only way to train it is to show up. So don't wait. Force yourself to show up, especially on the hard days. Your brain isn't wired for instant change. It's wired for patterns. It learns through repetition. That's why showing up every day matters more than anything else in the early stages of building discipline, focus, or any kind of meaningful habit. It's not about massive breakthroughs or sudden motivation. It's about teaching your brain again and again that this is who you are now. This is what you do. Every time you repeat an action, whether it's studying, exercising, writing, or showing up to do the work, you're carving a deeper groove into your neural circuitry. You're reinforcing a pathway. At first, it's faint. It's like walking through tall grass. There's resistance, the path isn't clear, and it takes effort. But if you keep walking that same line over time, the grass lays flat. The trail forms. Eventually, that route becomes the easiest one to take. That's how habit is formed, not through emotion, not through intensity, through repetition. The problem is most people stop too soon. They do the thing once or twice, don't see a result, and tell themselves it's not working. But the brain doesn't respond to short bursts. It responds to consistent signaling. You have to keep sending the message over and over. This matters. This is who I am. This is what I do now. And the more you send that message through your actions, not your words, not your intentions, but your actions, the more the brain adapts. And it doesn't just adapt passively. It rewires itself to make that behavior easier to repeat next time. That's the essence of neuroplasticity. Your brain is always changing. It's constantly remodeling itself based on what you do and what you don't do. If you repeatedly avoid hard things, your brain becomes better at avoidance. If you repeatedly lean into challenge, your brain becomes better at focus and effort. You're always training something, whether you're aware of it or not. The beauty is, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent. You don't have to feel amazing every time you do the work. In fact, most of your progress will come from the days you didn't feel ready, didn't feel focused, and still did it anyway, because those are the days when the signal is strongest. You're not just reinforcing the action, you're reinforcing the identity behind the action, and that identity, that belief system of I'm someone who shows up, gets stronger every time you choose to follow through. The more you show up, the easier it becomes, not because the work is easier, but because your brain starts to crave it. It begins to expect that level of effort. The pathways have been built. The signal is loud and clear. There's also a feedback loop here. As you build these neural patterns, your focus improves, your emotional resistance to discomfort decreases, your ability to lock in and stay with something hard, even when your mind wants to wander, gets sharper. That's not willpower. That's not some rare talent. That's just a reflection of what you've trained your brain to do, and that training happens daily, quietly, without fanfare. You don't need fireworks. You don't need the perfect playlist or the ideal environment. You need reps. You need to put in the work even when it's boring, even when you're not sure it's working, because on a neurological level it is. Every repetition matters. Every day you show up is another vote for the person you're becoming. So when it feels like nothing is changing, remember this. The change is already happening. You're building pathways. You're reshaping the way your brain responds to challenge, but that process doesn't reveal itself all at once. It's subtle, it's slow, and then, one day it's undeniable. That's why you show up. One of the biggest mistakes people make is waiting for clarity before they take action. They think they need to have it all figured out, the perfect plan, the perfect mindset, the perfect conditions, before they can begin, but that's backwards. Action comes first, clarity follows. You don't think your way into purpose or momentum. You move your way into it. You take the first step, even if it's shaky, even if it's small, and then the path begins to reveal itself. The brain thrives on feedback from experience. It doesn't get better at planning in a vacuum. It gets better when it's engaged in the process, when you start doing the work, whether that's learning, building, practicing, or showing up consistently. You give your nervous system something to respond to. You create data, and that data tells your brain what matters, where to focus, and what to adjust. But none of that happens if you're stuck in analysis mode, trying to mentally prepare for every variable. You can't outthink the process. You have to live it. Think about it like this. Waiting to feel confident before taking action is like expecting to be strong before you've ever trained. It doesn't work that way. Confidence is built through repetition. Direction is found through effort. The only way to know what works and what doesn't, what you care about and what you don't, is to engage fully, especially before you feel ready. The earlier you understand this, the faster you move forward, and yes, it's uncomfortable. The beginning always is. You won't feel like you know what you're doing. That's normal. Your brain is scanning for uncertainty, and that uncertainty creates friction. But friction isn't failure, it's part of learning. It's a sign you're in the zone where change happens. The key is to stay there long enough for your system to adapt. That's where clarity is born, not from stepping back, but from leaning in. And when you do this repeatedly, your brain starts changing its response to uncertainty. It becomes less of a threat and more of a cue to act. Instead of freezing or retreating, you begin to move forward without needing all the answers. That's a massive shift, not just psychologically, but neurologically. You become someone who takes action first and figures it out along the way. That's how you build momentum. That's how you build trust in yourself. There's a moment in every day when your mind will try to negotiate, when it will say, "Let's wait until later," or "You're not ready," or "You need more time." That's the moment to act, not because the conditions are perfect, but because you're training a deeper response. You're teaching your system that forward movement is the answer, not hesitation, not overthinking, just movement, and with each small decision to act, you send a clear message to your brain: we do hard things. We move even when we're uncertain. That message starts to shape who you are, not just how you feel today, but how you face every day that follows. That's why you act first, because clarity isn't a prerequisite, it's a reward. One of the most powerful things you can do to change your life is to remove decision making from the equation. What I mean is, stop waking up each day wondering whether or not you're going to do the work. That question should already be answered. The time, the place, the task, it should all be locked in ahead of time. Because if you leave it up to how you feel in the moment, you'll lose. You'll negotiate with yourself. You'll find reasons to skip, and those little moments of hesitation can quietly destroy consistency. That's why building a non-negotiable routine matters so much. When something is non-negotiable, it doesn't rely on mood, motivation, or convenience. It just is. You wake up and it happens. No debate, no delay. That's what rewires your behavior over time. You create a cue, a specific trigger that tells your brain, "Now we begin." And you stick to it. Not once in a while, not just on good days, every day. There's science behind this. The brain is pattern seeking. It likes structure. It's always looking for rhythms it can automate so it can save energy. That's how habits form. So when you set a consistent time to start your work, when you show up in the same place, with the same tools, in the same mental state, you're training your brain to associate that environment with focus and execution. Over time, just being in that space can flip the switch. That's not magic, that's biology. What people underestimate is how much energy they waste deciding. Just the mental strain of asking yourself, "Should I do this now?" over and over again drains your focus. It creates friction, but if the decision is already made, if you've built a structure and you trust it, you bypass that resistance. You don't have to feel motivated because you've already created the condition where action is automatic. This is also how you make discipline sustainable. You don't rely on willpower alone. Willpower is limited, it fluctuates, but routines, if built correctly, can carry you through even the days when you're tired, distracted, or overwhelmed. Because the routine doesn't care how you feel, it just asks you to show up, and once you're in motion, once you've taken that first step, momentum usually kicks in. It's the starting that's hard, not the doing. Key here is to design your environment in a way that supports what you want to become. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Don't put obstacles between you and the work. If you want to read in the morning, leave the book on your pillow. If you want to train, have your gear ready the night before. Make the desired behavior frictionless, because the easier it is to start, the more likely it is you'll follow through. And remember, once the routine is built, the battle shifts. It's no longer about forcing yourself every day. It's about honoring the system you've created. That's what creates consistency. That's what removes doubt. You don't have to ask yourself whether today is a good day to show up. The answer is always the same. You show up because that's what you do. Every time you show up, even for just a few minutes, you're casting a vote for the person you're becoming. These small actions may not feel significant in the moment, but they accumulate. They stack, and over time, they begin to shape your identity in ways that are deep and lasting. This is how real change happens, not in one big leap, but in tiny, consistent steps that reinforce a new belief. I'm someone who follows through. When you complete a task, even a small one, your brain registers it as a win. That win triggers a release of dopamine, not because you achieved something massive, but because you completed something meaningful. And when this process is repeated, your brain starts to expect the reward. It starts to crave the consistency. You're not just doing the work anymore. You're becoming someone who finds satisfaction in the process itself. And this is important because in the beginning, most of your effort won't feel like it's paying off. Progress will feel slow. There might not be visible change. But those small wins, the early reps, the quiet mornings, the times you show up when no one's watching, are laying the foundation for everything else. They're not just actions, they're evidence. Evidence that you're becoming someone different. You see, identity isn't something you discover. It's something you build. And the way you build it is by behaving like the person you want to be, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when it's uncomfortable. The brain pays close attention to repetition. The more you repeat a behavior, the more it becomes associated with who you are. So each time you complete that reading session, each time you put in the work, no matter how small, you're reinforcing a pattern. This is me now. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to crush it every day. What matters is that you show up and that you do something that aligns with your goals. That's what builds confidence, not loud declarations or distant ambitions, but quiet, consistent effort. Real confidence is built through earned experience, through the repetition of small wins that no one else sees, and over time, those wins start to shift your self-image. You no longer have to convince yourself that you're capable. You've proven it one day at a time. That's why you keep showing up, because every rep you complete is a vote for who you're becoming. Missing one day might seem harmless. Life happens, things get busy, and it's easy to say, I'll get back to it tomorrow. But what most people don't realize is that skipping one day makes it so much harder to show up the next. That momentum you were building, the rhythm you were starting to feel, it doesn't just pause, it fades. And the longer you stay away, the heavier the resistance becomes. It's not just physical, it's psychological. When you skip a day, your brain registers it. It starts to build a new association. This isn't urgent. This isn't necessary, and that internal shift, even if it's subtle, begins to lower your internal standard. It chips away at the identity you were reinforcing. One missed session turns into 2, then a week. And suddenly you're right back at the start, fighting to rebuild what was once automatic. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to show up and do something, anything, than to let the streak die. Because once you let go of that thread, it's easy to let go of the whole rope. Your brain needs to know that the habit is alive, that even on hard days, busy days, off days, you still show up. You may not go full speed. You may not feel your best, but you honor the commitment. It's also about protecting your confidence. When you skip, you create space for doubt. You start to question your ability to follow through. And that hesitation shows up the next time you try to engage. You feel sluggish, you overthink, the voice in your head gets louder. That's not a discipline problem, it's a momentum problem. You've lost the rhythm, and the only way to get it back is to show up, no matter how imperfect the effort feels. This is why the rule is simple: never miss twice. One off day is human. 2 in a row becomes a pattern, and patterns shape behavior. They shape belief. So when you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. Don't spiral, just reset. Show up the next day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, even if you're just going through the motions, because that small act of follow-through keeps the loop alive. It reminds your system who you are and what you stand for. And in the long run, that kind of resilience is what separates those who succeed from those who start over again and again. That's why you protect your momentum, because consistency keeps the identity intact. So when you think about forcing yourself to show up every day, understand that it's not about pressure, it's about alignment. It's about aligning your actions with the person you want to become, even on the days you don't feel ready, even when the motivation isn't there. You train your brain, you build patterns, you remove decision fatigue, and you protect your momentum not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The work doesn't just change your results, it changes you. Every repetition, every small win, every day you show up and push forward, it all counts, it all compounds, and over time it builds something far more powerful than discipline. It builds trust in yourself. Kind of trust that carries you through resistance, through doubt, through anything. So don't wait, don't negotiate, just show up every day.